My parents turned my celebration into my sister's engagement party. I cut them off. Years later, I became CEO, and they came crawling back. They used my money to throw a party, then announced my sister's engagement instead of my promotion. What did I say next? It shattered the room. My name is Nancy Allen. I was born and raised in a tranquil suburb of Oregon. From the outside, my family appeared to be the ideal of middle-class American life. A house with a lavender-filled front yard, a spotless white picket fence, and pleasant family dinners under soft lighting. However, the inside was far from as nice as it appeared. My parents, Mark and Linda Allen, were firm believers in modern parenting techniques, and I was their firstborn. My father, a software engineer with a passion for math, had always wanted to have a bright, special child. My mother told her friends that she had read more than 40 books on child psychology before I was born. I was born into this world with tremendous expectations, monitored, measured, and experimented on like a test subject. But when I turned 3 and still couldn't count to 20, or write my name correctly, Mom's dismay was obvious. "Mark, I don't think she's capable of learning as quickly as we hoped," she said, her voice tinged with disappointment and trepidation. "We need to intervene early so we don't miss the golden stage." My father simply nodded slightly, but I recall how he looked at me that day, as if I were a math problem with the wrong answer, unworthy of further investigation. My younger sister Claire was born when I was 4 years old, and everything changed at home. Mom appeared to be another person. Every room in the house was packed with brain-boosting toys, emotion flashcards, and advanced learning tools often found in high educational institutions. I had clear memories of that afternoon. I was quietly building Lego blocks in the corner of the living room when Mom passed by, looked at me and said, "Claire is only 7 months old and already responding to 3-step sequences. You never mind, keep playing." Claire received a musical high chair, Swedish cloth books, and a private monitor teacher before she turned 2. And me? I had pre-printed workbooks, a stubby pencil, and daily reminders that I needed to work harder to achieve. When I was 8, I finished second in the school-wide art competition. I brought my painting home, filled with excitement. Mom looked at it and said, "Well, Claire read an entire short story in English today." Dad didn't say anything because he was busy putting together a logic problem board for Claire downstairs. I've learned not to anticipate anything. No compliments, no incentives, and no proud expressions. I gradually became a shadow in my own family, ever present but never really seen. The breaking point came in the fall of the year I turned 12. I'd always had my own room, the upstairs one with the window facing the small woodland back our house, where morning light filtered through the drapes in gentle rays. I adored that room. It was the one place where I felt entirely myself. Claire barged in one evening, just as I was finishing up my schooling and about to hang a new drawing on the wall. "Mom says I'm moving up here. This room's bigger, and I need space for my new study corner." I looked at her and thought it was a joke. "No," I responded firmly. "This is my room." Claire shrugged and walked away. Everything had changed in less than 24 hours when I returned home from school. My possessions had been relocated to the smaller room near the laundry area. Claire's name now adorned the old room, which was outfitted with modern learning tools and a clean white study desk. I walked into the new room, which was small, cramped, and cold. The bed reclined against the wall. The desk was too small to hold my books and a lamp. I stood there with my hands clenched, sobbing silently. "Mom," I called. "Why would you do this? That was my room. I've had it since I was little." She didn't even turn around. "You're older now. You should learn to give way. Claire needs it more. Don't make a scene, Nancy." I did not respond. I stepped back in, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. The light from the hallway filtered through the gap under the door, pale and odd. For the first time, I felt it clearly. Despite being the firstborn, I was regarded as an afterthought in that household. Claire remained the focal point of the Allen household by the time I was in my senior year of high school. She was now a top student at a prominent private high school, driven around in a brand new SUV and receiving private tutoring twice a week. And me? I still attended public school, walked to class every morning, and handled everything on my own, from academics to extracurricular activities. I've never complained. I'd become accustomed to being in the background. But I wasn't expecting the moment when every pretense of impartiality was shattered right at the dinner table. My grandparents, Arthur and Helen, paid us a visit that night. They were the only ones in the family who made me feel seen and heard. We were eating Mom's lasagna as Claire discussed her summer program plans at Stanford. "That's wonderful," Grandma Helen replied, turning to me. "And what about you, Nancy? Have you thought about college yet?" I looked up for the first time, hoping to contribute something of my own. "I applied to the University of Oregon and UC Davis. I just got accepted into Oregon's business program, partial scholarship. If I get more financial aid, then—" I hadn't even finished when Mom put down her fork and knife. The sound resonated strongly. "Nancy," she said, her voice straining, "your father and I have discussed it, and we are unable to provide additional tuition assistance this year." I blinked. Dad jumped in, as if rehearsed. "We need to prioritize Claire. She's been invited to an Ivy League prep program. It's a rare opportunity." My heart sank. "So all the college savings you said were for both of us are going to Claire?" Mom sighed, as if to state the obvious. "Claire has real potential. You, Nancy, might want to consider starting at community college and transferring. Or taking time to work. Isn't a bad option either." Not a bad option. It took me a second to realize they'd completely cut me off. The room went silent. No one spoke, save for the soft clink of Grandma Helen's spoon on her plate. "Linda," she said, her voice low but firm, "both girls are my granddaughters, and I can't sit here and watch one be cast aside." Mom pursed her lips. "Mom, this isn't—" "Yes, it is," Grandpa Arthur added. "It absolutely is our business." That night, as I was removing dishes from the kitchen, Grandma Helen approached and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry this burden anymore," I heard her say. "We'll pay for your college tuition. All of it, no loans needed." My eyes were crimson when I turned. "But that's too much money." "It's not too much when it's an investment in someone who tries." She smiled warmly. "You don't need favoritism to shine, Nancy. You've already done it on your own." That fall I moved into the dorms at the University of Oregon. The day I left home, Mom gave me a half-hearted hug at the door and said, "Be frugal. And don't expect anything from us." Claire didn't look up from her phone. I stepped out of that house carrying my bag across the front yard path, feeling as if I had opened a new door, one free of patronizing stares and stinging comparisons. College was a different world. I wasn't the typical youngster. No longer the specter of a self-proclaimed genius. I was Nancy Allen, a business student with a bright mind and a strong personality. Professors praised my strategic thinking. Friends approached me for help with assignments. Every weekend night I called my grandparents to keep them up to date on my progress. My parents didn't call. They didn't check in either. Surprisingly, I was not unhappy. I didn't need it any longer. I had stopped looking for validation in a place where it was never readily available. What I had now was genuine value, one that came from within. I began my final year of college with a level of certainty that I had never imagined. Late-night library study sessions, part-time shifts at a small downtown cafe where I studied how customers think, and hours spent studying every investment model I could find online, helped me stand apart. Dr. Elgin, one of my finance instructors, suggested I apply for a competitive summer internship at Bradley and Lane Capital, a well-known investment firm in Seattle. I recall the first interview. A glass conference room, a beautiful wood table, and 3 managers seated across from me, each holding my resume. Zaylin, one of them, said, "What do you believe is the most important factor in developing an investment strategy?" I gave an answer. Understanding not just the data, but the psychology behind it. They exchanged glances and nods. I received the offer. From that summer forward, everything changed. After graduating with honors and having my study published in a financial magazine, I was offered a full-time position as a junior investment analyst at Bradley and Lane. I worked relentlessly, learning everything from risk studies and shareholder presentations to how to read between the lines on unpredictable market charts. 3 years later, when doing a standard assessment of a high-net-worth client portfolio, I discovered something concerning. A set of high-tech stocks in which our firm had made significant investments demonstrated signals of fake growth. The internal indications appeared to be especially robust when compared to the wider market. Most experts thought it had breakout potential. But I didn't. I spent 2 sleepless hours reading through every number, tracking back appendix reports, and eventually discovering the truth. Those businesses were inflating income through internal transactions, basically purchasing their own things to generate sales. If we did not withdraw in time, we would lose at least $32 million in customer assets. I couldn't be silent. That Monday morning, I entered the executive boardroom carrying a 42-page report and a risk simulation model. Nobody interrupted. When I finished, the CFO sat dumbfounded, then turned to the CEO and said, "She just saved the company." Within 3 days, the entire portfolio was reconstructed based on my proposal. And 6 months later, not only had we avoided a major loss, but the company recorded an 11.4% increase, the greatest in 7 years. I was promoted to lead investment strategist, but my journey didn't end there. I began using my after-hours time to create a risk score system based on market behavior, incorporating aspects such as consumer psychology, social media trends, and global political changes. It was the type of stuff the industry typically referred to as unquantifiable. I named it PRISM. Initially, PRISM was a personal project. However, after properly forecasting price fluctuations in 3 major stock groupings ahead of critical events, top management took notice. A year later, the method was fully integrated into the firm's fundamental strategy, allowing Bradley & Lane to outperform 2 of its main competitors in the sector. I still recall the day I was summoned to the senior boardroom. Richard Langley, the CEO, smiled at me once everyone had taken their seats. "Nancy," he responded, "we're creating an entirely new position, Chief Strategic Investment Officer, and no one is more deserving than you." I could barely breathe. Just 4 years ago, I was advised I should work for a time and figure things out later. That role was more than just a title. It was proof of everything I had conquered, from being the ignored child in my own home, to being the one at the helm of a multi-million-dollar company's boardroom. That evening, I did not celebrate with champagne or a party. I visited my grandparents' house, a simple red brick home filled with warmth. Grandma Helen was baking, and Grandpa Arthur was preparing tea. I placed the appointment letter on the table. They grinned at each other. "Little Nancy," Grandpa added, "now leading the way." I looked at him, then at Grandma, the first person who told me I didn't have to be extraordinary to be worthwhile. For the first time, I did not require anyone's approval. I had already proven it to myself by silent fortitude, dogged determination, and unshakable faith. After accepting the role as Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley & Lane, I knew I needed to document the event. Not with grandeur, but with a small, loving gathering of individuals who had supported me. My grandparents, a few close friends, and a couple of trustworthy co-workers. When I relayed the idea to my mother, she promptly suggested, "You should let us host it. Do it at home. Make it more intimate. The family can also reunite." I paused, but she added, "You only need to send the money for catering and decorations. I'll handle the guest list and everything else." I was skeptical, but I believed after all these years, this would be our chance to start anew. I transferred $3,500 to her account, and did not inquire further. A week later, when I arrived at the old house in Salem, where I'd grown up steadily sliding behind Claire's shadow, I never expected to walk into a brilliantly organized production. The mansion was more richly furnished than I had imagined. White orchids decorated the dining tables, silky golden ribbons wound up the staircase, and the aroma of great meals pervaded the environment. I noticed my grandparents at the small pub, speaking with a few family members. Claire climbed the steps in a gorgeous crimson satin gown, her face flawlessly made up. I didn't recognize the tall, polished man who was walking beside her. People gathered around, and just as I raised my glass to speak, my mother stood up, smiling. "Dear family," she said to you, "we're here today not just to reconnect, but to celebrate something truly special. Claire and her boyfriend Andrew are officially engaged." Cheers and applause erupted. I stood frozen. I turned to my mother. Her glance swept over me as if I were only another paid guest at a banquet. As I stepped forward to speak, my father grasped my wrist like a period at the end of a sentence. "Don't ruin this," he urged, his voice as sharp as steel. "If you make a scene now, don't expect anything else from this family. No contact, no inheritance, Nothing. I released his hand from mine, and took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to get away and let them drown in their own play. But the other side, which had spent too long in the shadows, refused to remain silent. I returned to the center of the room, raised my champagne glass and said, "Excuse me, everyone. May I have just a moment?" All eyes were on me, and Claire paused mid-step. My mother's brow furrowed. This gathering today, I continued softly but plainly, was planned to celebrate a major milestone in my life. I was recently named Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley & Lane, a major financial firm in Seattle. I paused and searched the room. I'm the one who sent the money for this event. My mother agreed to organize it and never once mentioned it would be turned into an engagement party. Murmurs echoed across the room. My grandparents remained frozen, astounded. I'm not against Claire's engagement, I told her. What I can't stay silent about is the fact that my own family tried to erase me from my own moment. Just like they did all throughout my childhood. Andrew looked at Claire, perplexed. You told me this was just a family gathering. Claire's face turned red. Andrew, I just wanted to wait for the right time. By using your sister's money to stage your big reveal, he asked, his voice dropping. I came here expecting to feel welcomed, not to watch someone be pushed out of their own moment. He put down his glass and walked away. Claire chased him in vain. The room plunged into uncomfortable silence. My father stood there, outraged. You should know your place, Nancy. This is still... No, I interrupted. This is a place built on favoritism. It's not a home anymore. I turned to my grandparents. They hadn't moved. Grandma Helen's eyes sparkled, and Grandpa Arthur took my hand as I approached them. I don't need the rest of this family to know who I am. I walked out the same door I'd previously left silently. But this time, I held my head high. Andrew left the party without saying anything, leaving behind Claire's terrified visage and a perplexed family. She chased him to the porch, but the car door shut before she could speak. The Mercedes' tail lights faded behind the trees, leaving the room silent after it had previously been full with laughter. Claire returned, her tears quickly replaced by wrath. You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand seeing me happy, so you destroy everything. I stood still. I did not reply. For the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was just sick of hearing the same boring blame repeated like a broken record. Claire, Grandma Helen said, her voice calm but firm. You made your own choices. Don't blame the consequences on your sister. My mother raced forward, her face blanched with rage and embarrassment. Nancy, who do you think you are to humiliate your sister in front of our family? I don't need to think, I said quietly. I just told the truth. And I've stayed quiet long enough. My father grabbed my mother's hand and tried to hold her back, but his eyes were blazing. If you walk out of here today, he said in a cold tone, you're no longer part of this family. Don't expect an inheritance. Don't expect to ever call us again. As far as we're concerned, you never existed. I was about to speak when Grandpa Arthur, who had been silent the entire evening, stepped forward, his voice ringing out like a bronze bell in the quiet room. David, if you're going to cut Nancy out of this family, then it's time we clarify a few things. Grandma Helen walked beside him, holding his hand. My mother looked at them, as if she knew what was coming. We updated our will 3 months ago, she replied gently. The entire estate, the house, the savings, the investment shares, it's all going to Nancy. My mother let out a surprising gasp. What? We've seen enough, Grandpa Arthur said. Enough to know who lives by their values, and who lives off of being coddled. Claire is my biological daughter, my mother nearly yelled. Why her? Because she's the only one in this family who has never demanded anything, complained, or stepped on others to elevate herself, Grandma Helen explained, her voice trembling slightly, but her gaze steady. We don't reward favoritism or deceit. Claire burst into tears as her pride disintegrated. She ran up the stairs, her red dress bursting like a bleeding stroke on a collapsing canvas. My mother stood in the middle of the room, lips trembling. My father turned away silently. My pulse pounded as I grasped my purse and gazed at my grandparents. I never asked for this. I don't need the inheritance. We know, Grandpa Arthur said, smiling. And that's exactly why you deserve it more than anyone. I looked around the house, which had once been a wound, but is now a stage for the truth to be shown. The family rose from their seats one by one, averting my gaze as if they had just woken up from a bad dream. Nobody stopped me when I turned to leave. I went outside, the spring night breeze stroking my cheeks and carrying the familiar scent of apple blossoms from the backyard. I heard the door close behind me, but this time it did not crash shut. It was the culmination of years of endurance. On the walk back to my grandparents' house, Grandma Helen reached out and lovingly grasped my hand. "You don't have to fight to prove yourself anymore, Nancy," she once said to me. "Now you get to just be." I looked at her with stinging eyes. I'd never felt so calm. Not because of money. This is not due to recognition. However, for the first time I chose myself over gaining acceptance from those who never truly wanted to see me. 3 years have passed since that night, when I walked out of my parents' house for the last time, carrying the truth, agony, and power I had no idea I possessed. I never looked back. I've never felt the impulse to. Throughout those 3 years, I gave my everything to my work at Bradley and Lane. Every early morning before dawn, every tranquil night on the 19th floor, I was there. Fine-tuning strategy, updating the Prism algorithm, listening to the market, and leading my team beyond previously insurmountable obstacles. When Richard Langley, the existing CEO, announced his retirement, no one expected him to choose me as his replacement. But for me, it was not luck. It was the conclusion of every effort, sleepless night, and difficult decision I had ever faced. I was 30 years old when I was officially appointed CEO of Bradley and Lane Capital, making me the company's youngest female CEO in its 60-plus year history. The announcement happened in the main hall. Camera lights are flashing. Every seat was filled with shareholders. I came on stage not to wow, but to represent a new generation, one that does not have to be born into grandeur to make its mark. After the lecture, I took out my phone and called my grandparents. "I did it," I exclaimed, my voice full of enthusiasm. Grandpa Arthur laughed on the other end, and Grandma Helen spoke words that I will never forget. "You've always been worthy, Nancy. From day one." Meanwhile, 40 miles away in Salem, where I grew up, not much had changed. Claire was now 27. She no longer wore her engagement ring or had steady employment. Andrew left that night, and her life became a series of failed attempts. She dropped a fashion course because she felt under too much pressure. I attempted being a content creator but quit, because no one gets my style. I eventually moved back in with our parents, into the room she had taken from me. I haven't interacted with my parents since that night. My grandparents occasionally mention that they have inquired about me through shared relationships, but I don't care any longer. I've realized that not every relationship is meant to last, especially when it is founded on denial and selfishness. Every Sunday afternoon I visit my grandparents for dinner. We toast bread and pore through old photo albums that I assumed were lost forever. Grandma Helen still tells me modest anecdotes about my upbringing. Grandpa Arthur swears he doesn't remember them, so I have to repeat every detail. I once asked them whether they had any regrets about leaving everything to me. "We didn't leave because of what it was worth," Grandma stated. "We left it to the one who understood the value of choice. The one who chose integrity over convenience. Silence when it mattered, and voice when it counted." I smiled because I recognized that the most valuable inheritance they had given me was faith, not assets. One spring afternoon, as I was leaving the office after a global strategy meeting, I observed someone waiting in the main lobby. I squinted and saw it was Claire. She appeared smaller, with an anxious expression, but she maintained her signature look, a luxury coat and polished heels. "I'm not here to apologize," Claire said hastily, like a barrier. I just want to know how you're doing so well without anyone lifting you up." I looked at her, neither angry nor pitying. "Because I once had nothing, Claire. And that's when I learned to stand on my own. That's something you've never had to do." Claire looked at me for a long time. She said nothing and began to walk away. I'm not convinced she'll ever change. But I know I will never be the sister who always gave in, endured, and remained silent to keep the peace. I strolled back to my workplace where my team was ready to cooperate and build something fresh. And I realized that no matter where the path leads, as long as you don't abandon yourself, the journey will always be worthwhile. My story is more than just about how I overcame parental bias. It displays the power of perseverance and inner worth. I was once ignored, pushed aside at my own celebration. But I chose to ascend out of honesty and respect, rather than anger. Today, I no longer seek affirmation from those who previously rejected me, because I have found a community of people who believe in me. Most importantly, I learned to believe in myself. What are your thoughts on Nancy's decision? Was she overly harsh, or was it exactly what she deserved given what she had gone through? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Karen demands VIP table claiming to know the owner, yet I'm the owner, and she was left crying with a $4,000 bill as after my revenge. Karen bursts into the restaurant, screaming that she knows the owner and demands that we give her and her group of friends the VIP table reserved for celebrities. The problem is that I own the restaurant and don't know who this lady is. However, I decided to play along and see what occurred. During dinner, one of the girls asked me if I thought my life was useless because I worked as a waiter. That was then I realized that all bets were out, and I was determined to extract my revenge. Here's what I did. This happened near Christmas and New Year's. My grandparents immigrated to Canada from Italy in the 1970s and opened a restaurant. When they died, my parents took over the restaurant, which they expanded and improved throughout the decades. I've been working in the restaurant since I was 15. As my parents became older, they retired and became snowbirds, spending their winters in Florida. They sold the restaurant to me a few years ago, but they kept a small portion of the stock as a side income in addition to their savings. As soon as I got control, I modernized the old house. I restored the eatery, changed the logo, and contacted local and national publications about placing advertisements. I invited food critics, bloggers, and vloggers. It was slow at first, and I worried that the loan I took out to do all of this was the worst mistake I'd ever made, that I'd damaged 3 generations of a family business. But it soon started to work. A local semi-famous YouTuber featured us in one of his videos, encouraging more people to visit and review us. Even on a Monday, we rapidly saw 5 to 10 times the usual volume of activity. We became a popular place for huge parties, and celebrities frequently stopped by on particular occasions. I even invited a few high-profile clients to come and cook for our guests. This cost a fortune, but we were fully stocked for the holidays. People had to make reservations in July to get a table in December. It took years to reach this stage. When things become busy, I don't just sit in the back office, I'm on the floor doing whatever needs to be done, whether it's greeting customers, bussing tables, or mopping floors. On nights with high-profile guests or events, I don a jacket and take command. One night, 6 women walked in. 5 of them appeared to be in their early 20s, with the leader possibly in her mid-20s. My best guess was that she was the elder sister of one of the females or an older sorority sister to new college students. I was greeting them at the door, and as they approached, Queen Bee Karen was telling the baby Karens how great this restaurant is, how good the food is, and how there might even be celebrities there. When she approached me, she said she needed a table for 6. It was my reply. Of course, can I get the name on the reservation? She stared at me. She replied, "Oh, I didn't make one, but that's fine. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He said he always leaves 1 or 2 tables open for special guests, and we can have one tonight." This is true for many well-known eateries, and I've recently done it as well. But I had no idea who this woman was, and she had never mentioned any of this to me. I realized she was attempting to get in without a reservation, but she had chosen the worst person to do so with. I informed her, "I'm sorry, but we can't seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we have no seats available." I didn't want to go full out and say, "I'm the owner, and we have never spoken before, so I never promised you anything," but I also didn't want to disgrace her in front of the other girls she was with at the moment. She then told one of the other girls to snap a photo of me. She stated that she would communicate with the owner to ensure that I was either cleaning toilets or fired before the end of the week. The other girls behind her agreed, shouting things like, "Yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye." I wasn't sure if they were in on it with her or if they really thought she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then stated, "Look, you can either give us a table or I will make your life extremely difficult. This is not worth losing your job." She kept pointing, attempting to demean me, and then saying things like, "Obviously, you aren't anyone here, because if you were, you would know who I am and never try to tell me anything other than yes or of course." She was constantly attempting to push me down and steal the table. At this point, it had been a difficult day for me, and I had 3 options. Number 1. I could inform her that I am the owner and confront her with all of this. Number 2. I could simply hand her the table and let it go. Or, finally, I could show Queen Bee Karen and her minions a lesson. I chose option 3. I smiled at her and replied, "Of course, ma'am, please follow me." I handed her one of the 3 tables we keep open in case a celebrity wanders in, which happens occasionally. I responded, "I apologize for everything, and you are right, it would be simpler just to give you the table." I also informed her that the first 3 rounds of drinks would be complimentary. I sat them down and personally served them. While they were sitting there, I said, "We need one of your credit cards and IDs just to keep on file, and we'll return them to you before you leave." Queen Karen gave me her card and told the baby Karen minions, "Tonight is on me." I took their orders, gave them their complimentary beverages, and warned them that due to our busy schedule tonight, the food may be delayed. The females were solely concerned about the free drinks. They ordered 3 rounds and still hadn't received their food. They ultimately called and requested me to look into it, all while giving me the worst attitude since they arrived. I assured them I'd look into it, but also asked if they needed more drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds. They were sloshed by the time the appetizers arrived, having spent most of the night drinking on an empty stomach and nibbling salads. As the dinner arrived, additional drinks were ordered. What these females didn't realize was that they were sitting at our VIP table, which generally costs a few $1,000s, but I didn't charge them. Except for the first 3 rounds, I charged them for the highly expensive cocktails they consumed throughout the evening. Furthermore, the table they were sitting at was VIP, as previously indicated, hence the menus differed. Prices are not listed on these menus. This is a restaurant industry trade secret. They also served higher-end menu items including white truffle, black caviar dinners, and specially imported West Coast oysters, among others. At one point during the night, I honestly started to wonder what I was doing. I was scared I was going too far with these poor girls. They might not know any better. But there were moments during the night that cheered me, such as when one of the baby Karens asked whether I thought my life was useless because all I ever did was serve. Also, one of the other employees told me that they were plotting ways to mess with me, believing that they could do so whenever they wanted and that I would always give them a table. I heard them say, "He's cute, but I wouldn't date a waiter like that. He's such a pushover." There were more comments like that throughout the night, so I continued their life lesson. By the end of the night, each female had racked up a bill of $500 to $600. I delivered Queen Karen a bill for $4,232.23, which included tax and tip. I've never seen someone sober up this quickly. She went from laughing and giggling with her friends to nearly crying. She quickly summoned me over and inquired whether this was a joke. I accepted the bill, looked it over, and apologized. "I will get you the correct bill amount." Again, she appeared absolutely relieved, as if she had received someone else's bill, and called me a effing idiot, before continuing to chat to her friends. When I returned to give her the correct bill, she flipped out again. It was simply a question. "Is there something wrong with this bill that you did not order?" She and the girls were startled and went over every line of the bill, even the first few lines, which described their original 3 rounds as complimentary. They then took out their phones and went over everything 100 times, totaling everything up. Queen Bee, apparently shocked, just replied, "1 second, I need to use the restroom." Part of me thought she'd dine and dash and leave baby Karens with the bill, but I quietly reminded her that we had her ID and credit card, without being too obvious. I was concerned that she would run out of money. 10 minutes later, she comes with new makeup, plainly crying, and tells me about how bad the food was, how terrible the drinks were, and so on, demanding that I at the very least cut the price in half. She went on to add that the baby Karens would help, despite the fact that she had already told them that the night was hers. Then, as if a bright bulb went off in her head, she brought up her purported relationship with the owner once more, as if it would give me extra impetus to cut the price in half. I grinned as I told her, "No, simply no, I cannot change the bill." She pulls out her phone and shows me a string of text messages from someone named after my restaurant, followed by the term owner. I immediately understood what she had been doing in the bathroom, most likely changing one of the other Karen minions' contact names and deleting previous texts to build this new script. I went through the messages and clicked on the contact information before telling her, "That's not the owner's cell phone number." Her reaction was, "He has multiple phones for business, of course. You don't know all of his phone numbers." I said, "How about this? If we call him and he says it's okay to take 50% off the bill, then I'll do it." Her response was to start raving and screaming, which grabbed the attention of the few remaining customers, and I realized it was time to finish this. I told her in a less sympathetic tone, "Cut the crap, little girl. You don't know the owner. You have never been here before, and if you keep shouting, I will call the cops. Her tone shifted as she tried to justify herself as best she could. My response to her pathetic retort was, my grandpa founded this restaurant. My family has been conducting this business for centuries. I've been working here for almost my entire life. I am the sole proprietor of this restaurant, and I have never seen you, heard of you, or promised anything to a stranger I've never met before tonight. The little Karens were frozen and unsure how to respond. Queen Bee was in tears. I said, now I've given you the table you requested? One of these specially reserved tables for high-end clients that I didn't charge you for, as well as 3 rounds of complimentary cocktails. If you don't pay your bill, I'll phone the cops and give them your ID. Karen signed the bill in tears, and the tiny Karens grabbed into their wallets and handed her the cash they had, which was probably a couple $100, with the promise to reimburse her more. 2 days later, an agitated man enters my restaurant and insists that one of my bartenders speak with me. I was in the back office working, so he had to wait about a half hour. She was with him, but she kept her head down. I took them both to my office and showed him clips from the security cameras, which had especially good audio because they were in the VIP section. We needed to keep accurate records in that area due to previous unrelated mishaps. I showed him most of it, their remarks, orders, and everything. After everything was said and done, he hurried out with her, shouting at her the whole time. I haven't seen or heard from any of them since, but the original bill I handed them, which did not contain the $120 oysters, is framed on my desk. As a side note, I did not lose as much money at the table and during 3 rounds of drinks as you might assume. I didn't lose anything since I didn't expect to gain anything at all. The expense of the lunch and accompanying drinks more than made up for the first 3 rounds losses. So, now that you've learned everything, am I the jerk? Aside from the money, trying to bully their way into grabbing a seat, and avoiding paying the bill, the Karen's perspective on the world was probably the most astounding aspect of the incident. That one statement about the OP's, original posters, ineptitude as a waiter really jumped out. It appeared that OP was about to abandon his entire vengeance scheme, but one of the baby Karens questioned him if he felt his life was pointless because all he had become was a waitress. That has to be one of the most ridiculously entitled perspectives we've ever seen on this channel. It may not be as thrilling or insane as some of the other stories, but the fact that she perceives the world in this manner is plain sick. There is nothing wrong with having a job, regardless of your income. This happens frequently with jobs like janitors, and I loathe it when people think they are superior just because they do not work in those roles. There's nothing wrong with becoming a janitor. I don't understand the thinking, but in this case, she not only feels that way, but she also wants to humiliate him for having a difficult job, such as being a waiter, or so she thinks he is doing. Another thing. I'm glad this tale ended on a relatively positive note, with the father seeking to reverse the situation but becoming more upset with his daughter than the restaurant owner. The only thing that frightened me was that the restaurant was recording audio from the people sitting at that table. I'd probably avoid going to a restaurant if I knew my conversations were being recorded. Anyway, I'm pleased everything worked out for the OP, but please tell me how you would have handled the situation if it had been your business and these were your customers. Was the OP a jerk, and why?